All right. Before we start, I want to honor this man right here. I think some of you may have seen him around the building. Some of you may have seen him around the building for a long time because Luis Salas, otherwise known as Big Lou, is retiring after 47 years in this building. Indeed.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Throughout his work as a maintenance officer here, Big Lou has done just about every job possible to make sure that this building actually works, mechanically, that is. Most importantly, during the height of the COVID shutdown, Big Lou was one of the few people who was here every day, trekking all the way in from Queens, making sure the building was clean, and for those of us who were here, make sure we were safe. So for that, thank you, and on behalf of the whole system, I want to thank you, Lou, and I wish you all the best, and I know now you can spend your retirement painting, which is, I know, what you love to do.
And I
So
can keep on continuing to clean my apartment.
yeah,
And it was a pleasure. Man, it's awesome. Everyone here, the whole staff. Did my best to make everybody, definitely. And I mean it. I came here with a good attitude every day. Worked nights for many years, came to days, worked as an elevator operator, elevator supervisor, back to general maintenance and cleaning, and it was a pleasure, believe me, when I say it. Wow. Seriously. During the COVID days, it was kind of risky, but we did it. We
Yep.
did it.
you did it.
Yes.
Lou, thank you very much. Huh?
Thank you.
Take care.
That's it, okay? Thank you, everyone. Good luck. Have a good day.
All right, always better to start with nice things, right? All right, now we're going to talk about less nice things. Sorry, it's been kind of chaotic this morning, for once. Just to note that tomorrow we will have Kazumi Ogawa, the director of the UN Mine Action Service, and Paul Heslop, the UN's Mine Action Service Special Advisor to the resident coordinator of the UN country team in Ukraine. Both of them will be here in person. And Nick Pond, Chief of the Mine Action Service for the UN Assistance Mission in UNAMA, who will join us remotely from Kabul. They'll be here to brief you on the International Day for Mine Awareness, which is observed on April 4th, and the work ongoing in Ukraine, Afghanistan, and beyond. And in a very short while, I will be joined by Jean-Pierre Lacroix, our Undersecretary General for Peace Operations, who will, of course, brief you on the situation in Lebanon. And on that, you will have seen that the statement we issued yesterday, in which the Secretary General strongly condemned the incident that took place on Sunday that resulted in the death of an Indonesian peacekeeper serving with the UN Interim Peacekeeping Force in Southern Lebanon, UNIFIL. Our colleagues who died in the line of duty yesterday was Cadet Fahrizal Rambe, and that took place in Taibe. His colleague, Private Rico Pramudia, was seriously injured and is being treated in a hospital in Beirut. We extend our deepest condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues of the fallen peacekeeper, as well as to the government and people of Indonesia. We also wish a full and swift recovery to the injured peacekeeper. And as you're aware, there was another incident today in Bani Hayan in Sector East, and where there are reports of further casualties of UN peacekeepers. At this point, we're seeking further information from our colleagues on the ground, who, as you can imagine, continue to do work in extremely challenging and dangerous conditions. Some of the injured were able to be extracted today, but we are not able to access the scene to extract two others due to the lack of security guarantees. Following coordination with the Lebanese and Israeli authorities, a team is on the way to the scene now. We will update you as soon as we have more information, but I know Jean-Pierre Lacroix will also have more information for you. As you know, UNIFIL peacekeepers have been the subject of aggressive behavior, intimidation, and threats, and this must stop immediately. This Saturday, a UNIFIL convoy traveling along a coastal road near our headquarters in Nakora in Sector West was subjected to 6 warning shots fired by IDF elements stationed nearby, resulting in some small arms impact on one of our vehicles. On their way back, a Merkava IDF tank fired its main gun with the shell exploding just 15 meters from a vehicle of UNIFIL's Quick Reaction Force Convoy. The vehicle suffered minor damage but was able to continue its movement. Once again, the Secretary General calls on all to uphold their obligations under international law and to ensure the safety and security of UN personnel and property at all times. Attacks on peacekeepers, as we've been saying quite a bit, is a grave violation of international humanitarian law and of Security Council Resolution 1701 and may amount to war crimes. There will need to be accountability. We urge the parties to de-escalate and immediately and fully adhere to their obligations under Security Council Resolution 1701 and to avail themselves of the existing mechanisms. On the humanitarian front in Lebanon, our colleagues on the ground tell us that attacks on healthcare are continuing at an alarming rate. According to WHO, 7 incidents were recorded over the weekend alone, killing at least 9 health workers on duty. In southern Lebanon, strikes also hit an ambulance, including vehicles transporting casualties from an early attack in Kfar Sir in Nabateh Governorate. Since the escalation began, 87 attacks on health cares have killed about 52 health workers and injured 126 others. The humanitarian resident and humanitarian coordinator and resident coordinator for the UN in Lebanon, Imran Riza, as well as the WHO representative, Dr. Abdi Nasser Abu Bakr, continue to call for the protection of health workers and health facilities and first responders, and they issued a joint statement over the weekend to that effect. We and our partners are continuing to work closely with the government to reach all people in need that we can reach. Our health partners, including WHO, have provided more than 33,500 consultations to displaced people and provided essential medicine to over 22,500 people. Once again, we stress that civilians, including humanitarian and healthcare workers and civilian infrastructure, must be protected at all times, a concern made even more urgent by announcement of expanded military operations in southern Lebanon by the Israeli government. We have, turning to Yemen, I can tell you that we have consistently warned of the risk of the spillover from the conflict in the Middle East, and we're gravely concerned by the Houthis' recent decision to engage in the regional war by launching military attacks against Israel. We urge the Houthis to refrain from any further involvement and instead engage in diplomatic and mediation efforts, particularly through the UN Special Envoy Hans Grunberg. Mr. Grunberg warned over the weekend this escalation risks drawing the country into the regional conflict, further complicating efforts to resolve the crisis in Yemen. We emphasize that international law, including international humanitarian law, must be respected by all parties at all times. We also underscore that Security Council Resolution 2768 and related resolutions on attacks against merchant and commercial vessels must be fully upheld. We remain committed to advancing a just and sustainable peace in Yemen. This requires all parties to prioritize the interests of the Yemeni people and further avoid entanglement in regional confrontation. And over the weekend, you will have seen that we issued a statement on behalf of the Secretary General in which he strongly condemned the drone attack carried out on March 28th on the residence of the president of the Kurdistan region of Iraq, President Nishirvan Barzani, and called for an immediate and thorough investigation. The Secretary General calls on all actors to reject violence in all its forms and to work to prevent any attempt to destabilize Iraq. And turning to the occupied Palestinian territory, our humanitarian colleagues at OCHA received reports over the weekend of airstrikes and shelling hitting residential areas in Gaza, as well as a fatal shooting by Israeli forces and other attacks by settlers in the West Bank. One incident documented by OCHA before dawn today, a Palestinian family was trapped inside their homes as Israeli settlers set fire to vehicles outside. This was in the village of Nahalin near Bethlehem, where neighbors managed to extinguish the fire and save the family. Such incidents have become frequent, and they put systematic pressure on Palestinians to leave their homes and their communities. They result in fatalities, injuries, damage, and displacement, deepening humanitarian needs. We remind all parties that civilians must always be protected. In law enforcement contexts, lethal force must be a last resort, and perpetrators of these unlawful attacks must be held to account. Meanwhile, we're also concerned about restrictions imposed on our humanitarian operations. Today, international NGOs confirmed their intention to proceed with a petition to the Israeli High Court of Justice challenging the new Israeli registration system, which further restricts their ability to operate not only in Israel but also in the occupied Palestinian territory. NGOs, as we've often said, play a critical role in the humanitarian response. In the occupied Palestinian territory, international NGOs have collectively delivered some $1 billion in assistance every year. OCHA says the prohibitive registration requirements are among several measures undermining people's access to humanitarian services. Israeli authorities must allow and facilitate rapid, unimpeded passage of humanitarian relief. They must reverse policies that obstruct humanitarian operations and ensure that humanitarian organizations are able to operate without compromising humanitarian principles. And regarding the situation in Baidoa, I can tell you that the UN office in Somalia calls for ensuring the safety and protection of the city's civilian population. The Secretary General further calls on the federal government of Somalia and federal member states to resolve their differences through constructive dialogue. The humanitarian coordinator in Somalia, George Conway, also called for the de-escalation in the southwest state, where Baidoa is, where tensions and clashes have forced some 45,000 people to flee their homes over the last week. In a statement over the weekend, Mr. Conway urged all to uphold their obligations to protect civilians, ensure the unhindered movement of people, and guarantee safe, sustained humanitarian access to all those who need it. He warned that without urgent action, the humanitarian situation in Baidoa, which already hosts 430,000 uprooted people, will deteriorate further. Most displacement is from central neighborhoods of Baidoa town towards nearby villages where basic services and humanitarian assistance is limited, as you can imagine. Our humanitarian colleagues note that the southwest state has been hit hard by drought, and the ongoing insecurity is only deepening a humanitarian crisis and holding back the response. And nearby Sudan, I can tell you that we continue to be alarmed by attacks on civilians and the growing constraints on humanitarian access across many parts of the country. In West Kordofan, local sources report that 7 people were killed and dozens injured when an airstrike hit a funeral gathering in Payam Kasha in Nuba Mountains last Friday. Also in West Kordofan state, insecurity continues to displace families. Our colleagues at the International Organization for Migration tell us that at least 120 people were forced to flee their homes that one same day. In South Kordofan, drone strikes and attacks in the town of Dilling reportedly caused 3 deaths on Saturday. Local sources on the ground in Dilling also report humanitarian situation there is rapidly deteriorating. The continued fighting and repeated drone strikes are disrupting critical supply routes across the Kordofan region. Key roads linking the city of El Obeid in North Kordofan to the towns of Dilling and Kadugli in South Kordofan are increasingly unsafe, which has a direct impact on hampering the movements of humanitarian supplies and commercial supplies. Red tape is further compounding these challenges, with essential medical activities in El Obeid suspended for nearly 1 month now. In Blue Nile State, escalating hostilities near the border with Ethiopia have severely constrained humanitarian operations. Movements beyond the state capital of Ed Damazin is largely suspended, cutting off access to people in need there. And in Darfur, increasing insecurity and restrictions on humanitarian movements are choking humanitarian access. Aid workers faced armed robberies, they faced attacks along key routes, while some organizations have been forced to suspend operations altogether, leaving vulnerable populations with even fewer services. Despite all of these challenges, we and our partners are continuing doing our best to respond to needs across Sudan. Civilians must be protected at all times, which should be a surprise to no one, is a requirement under international humanitarian law. Attacks on civilians and essential infrastructure must stop. We reiterate that all parties must ensure rapid, safe, and unhindered and unimpeded humanitarian access along all key routes and anywhere aid is needed. Turning to Ukraine, where our humanitarian colleagues tell us that attacks over the past 3 days have resulted in further civilian casualties and damage to critical infrastructure. In the region of Odessa, a strike on March 28th killed and injured people, including a child. A maternity hospital and other facilities and more than 70 homes were also damaged. The attack on the Odessa maternity hospital was the 5th attack this year on maternity facilities supported by the UN Population Fund. Since the beginning of the year, WHO has verified 124 attacks on healthcare in Ukraine out of 357 globally. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, over 2,900 attacks on healthcare have been reported across the country. Our humanitarian colleagues note that casualties and damage to homes and civilian infrastructure were also reported in other regions, including Mykolaiv and Donetsk. And today, parts of 7 regions remain without any electricity. 8 organizations are providing medical care, psychosocial support, food, shelter, materials such as to those, and cash assistance to those impacted by the strikes. Evacuations are ongoing, with hundreds of civilians relocated away from frontline areas. Also want to flag Haiti, because I know I'd been asked about the ongoing violence that we're seeing in Haiti. And I can tell you that the Secretary General strongly condemns the gang attacks that took place on the morning of March 29th in Petite Rivière in Haiti's Arbanite department. Estimates of the death toll vary, ranging from 10 to up to 80 people killed. This attack underscores the gravity of the security situation faced by the Haitian population. He urges Haitian authorities to conduct a thorough investigation. Our political mission in Haiti, BNU, is closely monitoring developments and remains fully engaged with national partners. And this morning in ECOSOC is holding its first special meeting on credit ratings, marking the implementation of another action from the Sevilla commitment agreed to at the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development, which took place in Sevilla last summer. The Deputy Secretary General, delivering remarks on behalf of the Secretary General, said that for the first time we have dedicated space bringing together member states, credit rating agencies, and investors and other key partners to address the issues of countries being priced out of the financing they need. Credit ratings should help open door to longer-term financing aligned with sustainable development, but all too often, these ratings are static and short-term oriented, based often on incomplete information, limiting countries' ability to access financing at rates that they can actually afford. The Secretary General highlighted 3 guiding principles: transforming mindsets from long-term speculation to long-term investment, recognizing that borrowing at reasonable costs to invest in development can help generate prosperity, and fostering accountability for all parties. Full remarks were shared with you. Our colleagues at the Peacebuilding Commission asked us to share the following with you: that the permanent representative of Morocco, Omar Hilal, will undertake an official visit to the Central African Republic from the 31st to 2nd of April. He will be accompanied by members of the Peacebuilding Commission and Assistant Secretary General for Peacebuilding, Elizabeth Spehar. The mission aims to reaffirm the sustained and international support for the comprehensive implementation of the 2019 Political Agreement for Peace and Reconciliation in the Central African Republic, following the successful conclusion of the country's December 2025 presidential and legislative elections, an achievement in the country's democratic journey. Today is Zero Waste Day. Every day we waste enough food for 1 billion meals, while 9% of humanity goes hungry. The Secretary General today stresses that we cannot take food for granted. It's time to build a zero-waste food system that nourishes both people and planet. Lastly, we have a quiz. One country paid up. It is home to the largest single-drop waterfall in the world by volume. No, single-drop waterfall, I learned this today, is just one fall of water. Want another hint?
Yes.
It is the only country in South America with English as its official language. Guyana, very good. So we say thank you very much to our friends in Georgetown. 96 people, 96 member states. They paid $349,961, and we thank them for each and every one of those dollars. Edith Lederer.
Thank you, Steph. Does the Secretary General have anyone in Islamabad monitoring potential talks or indirect contacts between the United States and Iran?
We do not have anybody there, but the Secretary General was scheduled to speak to the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, I think, as we speak, so he'll be updated.
And one other question. Is there any update or reaction to the Secretary General's efforts to put together this task force to try and get the Strait of Hormuz open for humanitarian aid, food, and fertilizer?
Yes, so the head of UNOPS is here in New York this week, and I know we'll be meeting with a number of member states. Pam, then we'll go down the line.
Thank you. Follow-up on that question is, have you gotten reactions to the mechanism, the I don't know what we'll call it, the Strait of Hormuz reopening mechanism? Have you gotten reaction from other countries supportive of this, willing to help, anything?
I mean, you know, the Secretary General had a series of calls with ambassadors last week to brief them. I can't say there was any negative reaction. And again, as I mentioned, George Moreira da Silva is in New York this week to have more in-depth conversations with various permanent representatives.
And on P5, any reactions from France, U.S.,
I'm
Russia?
not going to go into the details
Nothing.
at this point. Ibtisam, and then sorry, and then.
Thank you, Steph. Philip Lazzarini leaving his office tomorrow. Any words, and do you have somebody, did the Secretary General appointed somebody new?
Yes, Christian Saunders will take over as of 1st April to be the officer in charge of UNRWA. He will be based in Amman. I think he's already there, or he's on his way there. As you will recall, he had also served as the acting Commissioner General of UNRWA in 2019, and Christian has had a lot of experience at UNRWA, and we're happy that he will be officer in charge for the time being.
Why is he going to be based in Oman?
Amman.
Amman, oh, sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for correcting me. Linda.
Thank you, Steph. Apropos of the, the new initiative, since it's kind of similar to the Black Sea Initiative, I guess in some ways, between Russia and Ukraine back in 2022. How complicated is this to arrange? In other words, about how long did that take to arrange? And you know what I'm saying? Is this
there is
something we're talking a week,
there is
a
no
month?
simple road to get to where we want to be, but it is a road that we are going down this road with, I think, determination, and for the sake of all those who are suffering as a result of this conflict. Ms. Salome.
Thanks, Steph. Regarding the Secretary General's statement on the UNIFIL peacekeepers who were killed, it does note that the projectiles came from an unknown position, but that the peacekeepers were, quote, inside their position. So is this a case of being caught in the crossfire or directly targeted?
I think all of these things will come out in investigations. I think Monsieur Lacroix will have more details. But what is clear is that the position of UN facilities is more than well known to the parties, and we also do deconfliction when we're moving our convoys around.
So this position was known, to
Yep.
be clear,
Yep.
to the authorities.
And then I'll go to you, Namo.
I have two follow-up questions on the task force of the Strait of Hormuz. So over the weekend, Israel and Iran exchanged more rounds of strikes. Has the SG spoke to Iranian officials since the strikes, and what's Iran's current position and posture toward the initiative?
I mean, the Secretary General spoke, I think, on Friday to Iranian representatives. As for the Iranian position, I think you will have to ask them, but we are engaging with them. And we're also, I mean, our message for an end to this conflict is the same to all.
And will Iran be the hosting country to operate the Strait?
Those are all questions. All of those detailed questions are far from being worked out. Namo, and then Nabil.
Thank you, Stéphane. You noted in the introduction the attack on the private residence of the Kurdistan region's president, Nechirvan Barzani. This attack makes people wonder whether Kurdistan is under an existential threat, because it has been subjected to dozens of missile and drone attacks. And this comes at a time, like earlier this month, they commemorated the 1988 Anfal genocide.
Sorry, we're running out of time because I need to get our guests. What is the question, sir?
The question is basically, do you believe, does the Secretary General believe the international community has a moral obligation to protect Kurdistan, the only region in the world where the Kurds have a degree of political autonomy?
People have, civilians need to be protected, and nothing should be done to further destabilize in a very, very worrying situation. Nabil, Zora, and then we'll close it and we'll go to our guest.
Yes, thank you. So, Stéphane, how would you describe now the level of engagement maybe between the SG and the U.S. administration, or maybe the UN system in general and the U.S. administration? It seems that it has improved.
I mean, we've
in the last few weeks. And would this be translated, into financial support?
Well, I mean, we're not the one, whether it's the United States or Guyana, we're not the ones cutting the checks. So financial support, you have to talk to those who are providing the financial support. Listen, we've always had there are a number of issues in which the U.S. and the UN are cooperating and working actively, and contacts are being had. And this has been the case really since the beginning of this new administration, if that's what you're referring to. Okay, Zora, and then we'll go to Mr. Lacroix.
Hi, Steph. The United States continue to threaten attacks on Iran energy facility and even seizure of Khark Island and Iran's oil. At the same time, U.S. and Israel strikes on civilian infrastructure such as power system, industrial sites, universities, and residential areas in Iran are ongoing. Such attacks would violate international humanitarian law. Would this action constitute war crime? And what concrete step is the U.S. Secretary General planning to take to stop these attacks?
Look, the Secretary General has been very vocal about speaking out against all attacks on civilian infrastructure, wherever they occur. The issue is not so much who does them. The fact is that if there's an attack on clearly civilian infrastructure, that is not allowed under international humanitarian law, and the Secretary General has called that out. The Secretary General wants to see an end to this conflict, a return to diplomacy. All right, I'm going to go get Mr. Lacroix, so please don't go away, don't move.